when is the time when the big boys from Europe are buying the Canadians?
I want that to happen.
I believe that in Germany, if the law doesn't change significantly, within the next 3 years, an easy way to go up to 2.5% of the population being patients. So it means that the market has still the potential to triple almost.
Oh, wow.
And now talking about Sanity Group, we did 60 million euros last year revenue. At the moment, we do like 10 million a month. So it means 120 million euros potentially this year, like we double. Profitable.
How do you do it?
Our strategy is always around 3 different aspects. I think one of the biggest problems of the cannabis industry is the talent pool. You have the perfect skill set, you're a cool guy, but if you have a problem with people consuming cannabis, this is not the right company for you.
I don't know anybody that is as good with the investor network as you guys.
That's actually when the whole conversation with Organigram started.
Why did they choose Sanity?
You're the first one, I'm already telling that publicly, but it was a very interesting story.
The Cannabis Conversation, powered by Lumino. Exploring the legal cannabis industry and the people shaping it. Today's guest is Finn Hänsel, founder and managing director of Sanity Group, one of Europe's most influential cannabis businesses. Now, on to the show.
Finn, thank you so much for coming.
Well, welcome. I'm very happy to be here.
Lovely to be in Berlin when it's sunny for the first time.
It's nice. The spring has just started. Temperatures around 20 degrees. It's nice.
It's very nice. It's very nice. Obviously, we're going to be talking about Sanity and your experience there and how you set those things up. But as a recruiter, I often try to understand where did you build the soft and hard skills to be able to execute something like Sanity. Also, in preparation for this podcast, listen to the podcast that we had with Fabian back in 2020.
Oh, wow. A long time ago.
Yeah. And it was interesting to hear like what were the goals. COVID had just happened at the time.
Exactly.
You guys just shut down your location in Berlin. The retail location.
Yeah, exactly.
At the time. So it's just really interesting to listen to that and then listen to you at Tellman House a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And just see the kind of evolution there.
Yeah.
But if you don't mind, can you give us a little summary to what you've been up to in your crazy career and touch on what shaped you being able to do what you're doing now?
To be honest, even in school, back in the days in high school, I was always very active. I was the speaker of the students at the school. I like to organize events. I like to organize big initiatives. So I think this like passion for organizing and building up things has always been in me. And then when I actually finished university, I was thinking for a long time, what do I want to study? And originally I thought about architecture, I thought about law, I thought about many different things. The reason why I studied business administration was really because I wanted to have the flexibility to build up things, no matter if it's in Germany, no matter if it's in the UK, no matter if it's in the US. Just after university, I then started at BCG, the Boston Consulting Group. And that's actually where I learned all my, let's say, hard skills, like how to do a PowerPoint presentation, how to present, how to develop a strategy, how to actually execute a strategy, how to do business plans, how to do Excel. I would say really these are the hard skills that basically I think I never got in university, but really helped me to also understand how to convince a client in front of you. And I think that's pretty much what was helping me a lot to build my initial skill set. And then after a few years of BCG, I decided to found my own company. It's an online fashion retailer back in the days in Australia. And that, I think, where I learned the second big skill set, like everything around marketing, how to build up a company. And it was really nice because during that time at The Iconic, which was the name of this fashion startup in Australia, I realized already I could use everything that I learned in BCG, like presentations, strategies, OKRs, business plans, and so on. But then actually I could, as a consultant, you always tell people what to do. If you build up your own company, you can really do it for yourself. And that was a big difference because finally I could use the tool set that I had to create something myself. And I realized at that moment, I never want to do anything else in my life than building up companies. And I did a lot of things on the side. Like, I built up The Iconic, which is still very successful in Australia. It's like the Zalando of Australia and New Zealand. Afterwards, I went back to Germany. I built up Movinga, which is an online moving platform. I built a brewery on the side. So if you're in Berlin the next days and you go here in the area, in the bar in the evening, it's very likely that you can buy our beer, Berliner Berg. Yes. We even did... When we still had our big CBD business, we even did a CBD beer brewed in Berlin. IPA, craft beer, and instead of hops, we used hemp. That was very cool.
No way.
And the brewery is actually just around the corner here. It's like probably 10 minutes, not even.
Wow.
Yeah, with a nice beer garden. So if you don't have anything to do with this weather, you can go there.
I'm definitely checking it out.
And to be honest, like I think these experiences really helped me to understand how to raise money, how to build a strategy, how to build teams, how to lead teams. And yeah, that brought me where I am today.
You've moved around quite a lot.
Yeah, no, I was actually like, as I mentioned, born in northern Germany in Flensburg, a small city at the border to Denmark. Then during university, I lived in New Zealand, Australia, the US, Hungary, and Austria. And then I was actually straight after university, I went to South Africa with BCG, and from South Africa back to Germany, from Germany to Australia, and from Australia then back to Germany, and that's where I landed in Berlin.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You also worked for Rocket?
Exactly.
Correct me if I'm wrong at any stage, but also in business school, and I can completely relate. I always wanted to do architecture, but then I realized I don't actually know what I want. So let me study business, because then I can turn any passion
100%.
into a career. Right?
100%.
So that's how I approached it, exactly the same way. And the first time in business school, I actually heard about Rocket Internet. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of Rocket Internet is trying to figure out what kind of business models are working in more tech developed markets like the US.
Yeah.
And then building the first MVP of that in Europe with the aim to get acquired once they want to move over the
Absolutely.
pond, right?
Yeah. I remember that people always called Rocket Internet the copycat factory. Exactly what you said. You pick a business model that's run very well in the US, for example. You start an MVP in Europe, and then you roll out globally. And your objective was that the original company in the US, it sometimes will acquire you instead of doing the rollout European-wide or internationally themselves. However, having said that, and you might not believe me now, but I never liked that business model. I think it was good to learn execution, because when you don't have to think about vision and strategy and, let's say, reason to exist, when you just copy and everything basically is already as a blueprint there, it's really just about execution. And that was a very good learning experience. However, I never liked the fact that we weren't something original in the market.
I never thought of it like that. In school, they pitched it to me as the copycat factory.
Yeah.
But I actually thought, and the same reason from what I heard at the Tellman House, the same reason that Organigram isn't telling you how to run your European business is because you know the European culture, you know how to make product market fit
and the regulation
in the European, exactly. So I think there is still a huge talent in, I mean, if I was a North American, I'm like, okay, now I want to move over. Usually they move in with an acquisition strategy anyway.
Yeah.
And you've just made their life incredibly easy.
Absolutely.
I don't see it as a negative thing.
Yeah, you're right. And I would differentiate between Rocket Internet and what we are building, because the difference is really Rocket Internet, when the company is founded. At Rocket Internet, you try to copy one company and you try to do everything focused on the objective that this one company is buying you. So, for example, Zalando was designed completely after Zappos in the US, even like it started with ZA in the name. Everything was a copycat. The irony of the story is that Zalando now is bigger than Zappos. So obviously the copycat became bigger than the original. But for example, Groupon is what the other way around. Like in Groupon, they had a deal that basically they started originally without Groupon, but then Groupon very quickly took over and said, like, we want you to roll out our international business now. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. They tried it with some other companies too. But at the end of the day, for example, Vimdo was something where they tried to copy Airbnb. But then at the end, Airbnb didn't want to play along. And so Vimdo more or less disappeared from the screen now. And I remember when Vimdo was created, there was even the scandal that they took 90% of the source code of Airbnb.
Oh, wow.
And the imprint was even part of the Airbnb imprint. So, and that's what I mean. That's what I never liked. I never liked really not having your own ideas. And even the company I created in Australia, The Iconic, was very different from the other Zalando businesses, because for me, it was always important that we have our own reason to exist, which is not only let's copy a successful company, but rather do something ourselves. And now talking about Sanity Group, in the cannabis space, and that's why I loved it so much and still love it, is because we were a pioneer. Obviously, there were already companies in Canada existent, or in California, or even in Germany. But the thing is, because Europe is so different, it's not a copycat of Organigram or of Aurora or of like whoever is there. You really have to build a specific company for the European market. And even within Europe, it's very different if you're in Germany, if you're in Switzerland, if you're in Poland, if you're in the UK, very different markets. And that's the reason why I think the whole copycat strategy was not working. However, obviously, I think it's very smart for the Canadians and also maybe it's sometimes for US companies that want to expand into Europe to really see what I also mentioned, Talman House, that you have local teams who know the regulation, who know the culture, and who build a company that fits to the market. And now the interesting question will be how to integrate it into a global company. So where both sides, Canada and Europe, can play a role.
That makes a lot of sense. I don't know anybody that is as good as with the investor network as you guys. Even the episode that I listened to again with Fabian, you guys had just completed, I think it was 24 million raise back in 2020.
Yeah.
It was the biggest raise here in Europe. I remember Mario Götze and I don't know what kind of people were there. Will.i.am. How do you do it?
To be honest, when you found a company, you have to make a basic decision. Do you want to run the company until the end of your life? And should that company become your legacy and you can imagine being in control and ownership for the next 20 years? Or is an exit the ultimate goal for you and the company? And the second you're taking VC investors on board, that decision is made. Because a VC investor will not stay in the long run on the company and support you as a founder. As soon as you take a VC company on, you know that the exit within 7 years is the objective. So sometimes I regretted that because to a certain degree, you also become very much like not very independent anymore once you do that, because you obviously have shareholders who have opinions and who have a power on the cap table, so they can actually tell you what they think and you need to like at least react to that. However, I think that is very important to understand that this company was built from the beginning to have an exit at some point. Did I regret it at some point? Maybe yes, maybe no. I always thought like maybe the stock market could be a good option. But I mean, to be honest, that ship has passed because the stock market for cannabis is horrible for many years now. Organigram is suffering under that too. But the interesting thing, and this comes back to your question, is because we come from the tech world, like Rocket Internet, but also Movinga and all the companies I did, these companies are by definition built to exit. Always. No matter if they're copycats or not, they're always, and that's the reason why when you are in this tech world, you have a contact with a lot of shareholders, investors, VC funds, and so on. And this network was not created during Sanity Group. This network I already had before Sanity Group. And when I left my company, Movinga, back in the days, I remember I had a very big call with all the shareholders of Movinga, which were like 20 shareholders, who wanted to convince me to stay when I resigned. And I remember I was at a conference in Switzerland and I had a call with like 20 people. And I didn't actually plan to do much fundraising for Sanity Group. But when I told the shareholders of Movinga, look, guys, I'm definitely leaving and I'm building something new myself. Someone, and back in the days it was Olli Samwer, asking the question, like the founder of Rocket Internet, in the call asking the question, so what are you doing next? And I was like, well, I'm wanting to create a cannabis company. And then suddenly all the shareholders of Movinga said like, oh, can we participate? Can we participate? So first of all, obviously that I took it as a compliment for myself. So I'm like, okay, these guys want to keep working with me. That's nice. And that's the way how the first financing round took place. We actually said like, look, if there are so many VCs who want to give us money and who accept a good valuation, then let's do it because with money we can do more. You didn't ask the question, but I still say it anyways. It's always a double-edged sword because if you have money, you spend it. And I was very much hating it that I had the feeling that we became inefficient because we always had enough money. When I met the guys for 420 Pharma, for example, for the first time, they never had money. So they had to become very smart on how they do things, how they are lean, how do they make sure everything works smoothly. They didn't waste a single euro in the first years. Well, we basically said like, oh, let's try CBD. Let's try pharmaceutical development. Oh, let's try to have a processing company in Frankfurt. Oh, let's try to have our retail stores. And that obviously, if you wouldn't have done that, I think we would have burned a lot less money. But it is what it is. So at the end, I think I can honestly say we've been successful. But if the market would have not opened up 2 years ago like it did, maybe like I would sit here now in a different mindset and mood.
Absolutely. Is this philosophy wrong? Because obviously when I started my company, I was asked the same questions. We never took on any investors. We're completely bootstrapped because I wanted to stay flexible and those kind of things. But my philosophy was, and maybe this is wrong, I've never done what you've done, is if I build something that is good enough for me to stay in for 20 years, it will be attractive enough to bring in investors. And then, so I was like, if I focus on that, at least I've got both doors open. Is that the wrong or the right?
I wouldn't say there is wrong or right. I can tell you why I historically always picked the shareholder path.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is, by definition, which is the reason why I'm also taking cannabis medically, I'm ADHD. So, and I don't want to use it as an excuse, but it leads to the fact that I'm an experimenter. I like to try many different things. I try to see what works. And by definition, unfortunately, this is the counterpart of it. I'm probably not very disciplined, and I'm not very focusing on what's highest priority. I'm trying, but it's hard for me. But that also means if I run a business, it's probably more expensive than if someone runs a business who's very focused. Because I always have ideas like, oh, let's try that, or let's try that. And that's the reason why, by definition, when I create a business, I can only fully work if I have enough money to try out things. And that's the reason why I personally always decided for the path to raise money. However, I think there is no right or wrong. If you want to keep control of your business and you're happy to do it, then in my opinion, you shouldn't raise money. And only after many years, when you say oh, I'm profitable now, I don't know what this is going forward, then you can consider doing an exit or taking additional shareholders on if you want something.
Mm-hmm.
That strategy is as good as raising money from the beginning. Because obviously what I also find sometimes difficult, if you raise a lot of money, it also means you have a lot of responsibility on your shoulders.
Yeah.
Because if, for example, as I mentioned 2 years ago, the change would have not happened and something bad would have happened in the industry, then I would have needed to tell my shareholders, look, guys, I know you all gave me money, but it's unfortunately ending into nowhere because the industry is not developing as expected. And that's a big responsibility, and that's a call you don't want to make.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why I'm very happy. But if you bootstrap a company, you have different challenges, but you at least don't have that challenge. So there's no right and wrong. I think both ways work very fine, and also hybrids in between. But I think it's a question of personality, time, resources you need for the business. Because if you, for example, build a cultivation facility, obviously bootstrapping is very difficult, right?
Oh, yeah.
If you're building a recruiting company, bootstrapping is relatively easy.
Very easy. Yeah. Our overheads are very low.
Yeah.
It's salaries, basically.
Yeah.
And I guess, as you were saying, to testing, right? I guess it is a huge success factor. Whoever tests the most, knows what works and what doesn't work, allows for a more confident step in the right direction. I guess that's also what's planned into these first raises. It's not just hey, we're going to make money straight away. We're going to test all these things.
Exactly.
Now we know where
exactly.
to make money, right?
So I can tell you, at Rocket Internet, we always call it beta alpha strategy, because by definition, I've always been in marketing. And at Rocket Internet, the idea was always, there are different marketing channels. You have TV, radio, Google, Meta, Facebook, whatever.
Yeah.
And if you bootstrap a company, you do a very strong hypothesis to think which of those channels are working and which ones are not. And you're trying slowly but surely to build up those channels.
Mm-hmm.
When you have endless amount of money, you try all channels with a lot of money. And then after 3 weeks, you find out which ones are working. And then you focus on those.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big difference, because that's what I mean. When you have enough money, you can experiment.
It's that bullseye method, no?
Exactly. And you can actually then focus on what works, while bootstrapping is still always a bit trial and error. And I think that's a big difference. And that's the reason why I think the way how we did marketing is very much similar to what you do when you have shareholders. You just try out more things, and you will definitely fail more than if you're careful and trying one thing after the other, which you normally do when you have less money.
What channels, based on your analogy, or businesses did you guys test where you thought this is going to work and it didn't? Anyone?
Oh, it's a lot.
Yeah, let's go.
To be honest, not everyone, but a lot of companies did the same in the beginning. So I think we are probably one of the only companies that are in the market that still have a CBD side to our business. It's profitable, it's small, but there were times when the CBD business was 10 times bigger than the medical business. Yep. I remember we had month where we had more than €1 million monthly revenues when we did a big deal with DM or a big deal with Douglas, or for example, Douglas put us into their advent calendar with our products for Vi, exactly. And back in the days, we had 1 million monthly revenue in CBD and only 100,000 in medical. And during that time, everyone thought medical is dead, the future is CBD. And then if you think about it, luckily we had both, because when CBD completely collapsed during and after Corona, we had medical cannabis to buffer that and actually to then use it again. But obviously, with the knowledge I have today, I would have invested much less in CBD, because when we saw that CBD is developing traction and going well, we did TV advertising, we did out-of-home advertising, and we spent a lot of money on getting customers into the CBD funnel. And what we realized, those customers were not very loyal. So we always said we can spend X amount of money on a new customer, because we believe the customer will come back at least 6 times during 2 years. And the reality is the customer always never came back. And that's the reason why we crazily overinvested in CBD. I would probably say 1/3 of all the money we ever raised from shareholders went into the CBD business. And today the CBD business is doing less than 20,000 euros per month. So that's obviously something that I don't say has failed, but that was a, let's say, very strong learning experience of something where we believed it will become big. And then at the end, it didn't. And there are some other examples. I mean, we had a cosmetic brand. We sold it at some point. It's still running very well, called This Place, but very small. We did a finished pharmaceutical, and then at some point realized it was too expensive developing this. So we took another shareholder on board. So we are still minority investor in that finished pharmaceutical. But at the end of the day, in the beginning, and you probably remember those times, in 2017, 18, everyone was extremely hyped by cannabis.
Massive.
And basically everyone said, whenever you need money, there will be 1 million people who will put money on you. Obviously, this has changed. I don't know if it was Corona or was it just accidentally during Corona. But when we realized it's not that easy to get money anymore, we really had to cut everything that is not core business. We sold the cosmetic brand. We got an investor for the finished pharmaceutical to make sure we don't have to finance it. We ramped down our CBD business. And that's typical things where we believed in the beginning this will be big topics, and at the end they're not really relevant for us anymore today.
Pushed you to make a decision on what tests are working and what isn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to be honest, my natural tendency is always to keep going. But it's good that I have people in the company who tell me, Finn, stop it. It's like you're riding a dead horse. It's like, okay, good.
I don't know how many people have tried to move away from the idea to set up Cultivation.
Yeah.
But usually companies with as much money as you guys had would have set up Cultivation.
I'm very happy we didn't do it.
But why?
And I had so many proposals: Greece, Portugal, Croatia, Lesotho, South Africa, Colombia. I think, to be honest, I'm not good in saying no, but I think I had to say no to at least 20 or 25 proposals. I'm very happy we didn't do it. And the reason why, and this is really good because, as I mentioned, I come from the tech world. And in the tech world, you have the one mindset is the less assets you have, the better it is, because it gives you freedom, flexibility, and you don't have to utilize assets. And as I mentioned to you, I also have a beer brewery, and I always said no beer brewery in the world is growing the hops themselves. By the way, it's the same true for the tobacco industry. They have contracts with tobacco farmers, but they don't
100%.
own their own tobacco plants. They give guidelines and everything. And that's the reason why I said from the beginning, an end-to-end integration from cultivation to sale is probably on that scale that we want to build. It's not the right thing to do. And to be very honest, I'm very happy. One single cultivation facility, if we would have done one, would have not been able to fulfill the demand that we're serving right now. We have flexibility. We can have a portfolio of, for example, our Avai signature brand, only craft cultivators, our Zorgs brand, only value for money. And this could not come from the same facility.
100%.
And that's the reason why the flexibility to answer to market demands is much better than having your own cultivation. Plus, cultivation is so difficult to run with microbiology, and then you have a harvest that doesn't work, then you can't deliver. So I'm very happy we didn't do it, but back in the days, it was a gut feeling based on the asset light philosophy that you have in the tech world.
I love it. I think looking at adjacent markets that are way more developed and then seeing, okay, where did they end up? We actually always said this when companies were we're going to be the new vertically integrated. It's why? I feel like this is the only industry where people get a hard on for saying that they're vertically integrated. I think it came from
you know why? I think in the beginning, the Canadians, and in the beginning, I think the currency you had in the cannabis space was licenses. So you can say, I have a license for a cultivation, and that was wow, oh God, he has a cultivation license, and they sold it during the process as tangible competitive advantages to have a license. They always say like everyone can be a wholesaler, but having a license, only a few companies can. And that's the reason why I think those licenses was the reason why many people or many companies try to get as many licenses as possible.
I thought that it came from two angles. One was the Canadian regulator at the time saying, if shit goes wrong, we want one person to point at.
Yeah.
So you need to own the value chain.
Yeah, true though.
And also at the beginning, if you wanted to, yourself, even in the Fabian episode, it was hard to find good suppliers. So
Yeah.
at some point you're like, let me just do it myself.
Yeah.
So it's like trying to set up all of these different...
It's easy to say like, oh, I don't have suppliers, like I'm just doing it myself. I mean, between the decision of doing it yourself and having the first harvest is easily 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, and 20 million.
Yeah, exactly. And 20 million running down the drain. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. You took the tobacco example. It's like Coca-Cola doesn't grow its own sugar, is what we used to also say. It's like no industry does this. They do what they do best and just focus on that vertical, which you guys have done.
You know that the only exception is the wine industry. But again, and that's why I said like scalability. The biggest wine companies in the world don't have their own vineyards anymore. So they buy wines from all other vineyards. Only the small craft vineyards, they produce their own wine and they have the label of the vineyard on it. But if you go, for example, to an Aldi and you get a €4 wine, you can imagine it's not a single vineyard origin brand. And that's the reason why I said, like, you have to make the decision at some point. Do I want to be a small, cool craft company? And I think therefore you can really do from seed to sale, like everything within one supply chain. But if you really want to scale to become a global dominating leading company, then you cannot build everything on your own cultivation. It's not possible.
I couldn't agree more. I always, from a cultivation perspective, the industry I compare it to as well is wine. It's like you can have your €3 wine in every supermarket.
Yeah.
And you've got a wine with a story attached to it, a specific cultivation method, a specific genetic, grown in a specific region under specific conditions that can ask for €10,000 a bottle, right?
Yeah.
I can't wait for the champagne of cannabis, where like any cannabis that comes from the Emerald Triangle needs to be called, or can only be called like Californian cannabis, for example, or I don't know. Yeah. And then you can demand these extortionate prices for a specific story, really. It's a marketing strategy at the end of the day.
And that's, to be honest, a very interesting input because, for example, with our medical brand Avai Signature, we try to tell the story of the cultivator. So, for example, we have a cultivator called Habitat. They do aquaponic. Our cannabis expert, Tim, is going there. We film it. We interview the cultivator. We make a big story about the philosophy that they have because we believe that people who are willing to pay more per gram for cannabis, they want the story. They want to understand what the philosophy of the grower is. They want to understand what the cultivation facility looks like. They want to understand how things are done there, where it is located. And that exactly is confirming what you say. If you want to have a high price, you need the story behind it.
100%.
But you don't need to be a cultivator to tell the story. You can just pick the best cultivators, curate the product, and tell the story of the cultivator. While, for example, with Zoics, where we actually go rather for the value for money, not a single consumer is wondering where the product is from. As long as there's enough THC in there, the price is good, and there's no mold on it, people are happy to go.
It's also what market you want to target. I would never buy a wine for €10,000.
Yeah.
For example, but I'm in the €10 bottle market. Nothing too crazy.
But not the €2 bottle.
Not that one. Portugal, especially for €10, you get amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Finn, maybe a little bit to the big news that everyone is seeing from you regarding the Organigram deal, BAT being in the background there. For me, it's always been, obviously we had Jazz Pharmaceuticals buying GW, but this is the first kind of, and I see them as them playing a completely different game in a sense, but this is the big boys coming and buying the road. I always went like, okay, they're going to let the little guys pave the road and then they're just going to buy the road.
Kind of, because, I mean, again, careful what I'm saying now, but the interesting thing is that the Canadian and the US market are stuck right now. Yeah. The Canadian market is not growing anymore. So it means if the Canadian want to grow over the next 10 years, they need to act outside Canada. And I can tell you, if they don't buy companies now, they have the risk that the companies in Europe become bigger than the companies in Canada. So, for example, we did 60 million euros last year revenue. At the moment, we do like 10 million a month. So it means 120 million euros potentially this year, like we double. With 120 million euros per year, profitable, you are already better placed than a lot of Canadian companies.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm actually sometimes joking saying the question is, when is the time when the big boys from Europe are buying the Canadians?
Super interesting.
Yeah.
I want that to happen.
Yeah, me too.
I
mean, the thing is, I can tell you more about like why we got acquired. At the end of the day, for us, it was really what I mentioned in the beginning. You have shareholders. There is clear that you need an exit at some point. And because we know Organigram and we know BAT, it made sense for us. But I would have been also curious to wait a bit longer and see how the other way around is happening.
Or you can just set up another company, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, theoretically.
And we're going back into a little bit the investor kind of relationships thing. But I've been waiting for this moment to happen that somebody like BAT, I know it's an extension of Organigram, is invested. I know BAT was also one of the major investors back in 2024.
Yeah, 2024. Yeah.
2024. Why did they choose Sanity? And is it just your relationship with the other investors? And is it just like a little group thing? Or is there something where you're like, okay, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what makes you the most attractive. Not that you're not special. I'm not saying that, but it's, what is the secret sauce?
So I can tell you, like, and you're the first one, I'm really telling that publicly, but it was a very interesting story. So to be very honest, it was 2023, I think. I was in Portugal with my family because my father-in-law turned 75. He invited the whole family to go to South Portugal, Faro, to have family holidays. And I remember 2 days before, I got a message on LinkedIn, which is already very peculiar because I never look into LinkedIn normally. Like, because I get so many spam messages that I kind of like very often just ignore random requests. And there was an advertising agency who actually asked me if I would be willing to talk to some of their clients for like half an hour because they want to learn more about the CBD space. And to be very honest, under every other circumstance, I would have said no. But during the holiday with my family, I told to my wife that at least 3 to 4 hours per day I need to work, at least for the first 2 days. And then this agency was suggesting, like, exactly in the slot where I had time to do like a little get to know each other. And I was like, well, why not? And I was sitting in the hotel room in Portugal when suddenly like the video conference started. And the advertising agency said, like, yeah, great that you are here. Now you want to introduce you our client who wants to get to know you. Here's the team from BAT, British American Tobacco, because they look at the CBD space. And what I figured out then, they had like 15 meetings that day, each half an hour, where 15 CBD companies are presenting their ideas about why CBD is the next big thing. And the thing is, because I didn't have anything to lose, I told BAT straight away, look, guys, CBD is over. It's funny that you look into the industry and probably a lot of other companies are pitching you why CBD is so great. But I think CBD is dead. You have novel food. You have the lacking studies. It's a trend that's already in the passing. What we really do is THC these days and medical THC. And then half an hour was over and I saw that already the next CBD company was joining the call. And they said, no, we want to talk to this guy longer. Please leave, please wait in the waiting room. And then I think at the end of the day, I had a 1.5 hours discussion with BAT about regulatory framework, about CBD versus THC. And obviously also told them about which shareholders we have on board. It was after the round where Mario Götze and all the celebrities came in. Even after the call, I didn't have any expectation. But then suddenly the advertising agency called me in the evening and they said like, these guys were over the moon. Like they saw like 15 companies that day and they had the feeling you were the only one who was being honest about the CBD market. They looked at the company track record about like, who are your shareholders? They looked at your track record of what you have done before. And this is really right up the alley from BAT. So they want to keep talking. And then we kept talking at least like, 7-8 times. We had calls. I came to London. They came to us. And then at some point they just said like, so you can decide, should we just invest or should we buy you straight away? And I said like, look, I think it's too early to sell, but let's talk about investing. And then it took almost another year until they then really invested.
Just a DD.
No, it's like getting to know each other, figuring out what they want, what we want. I guess coming back to your question, why they picked us, I think it was a mix between my track record, absolute coincidence with this call happening. I guess it was to a certain degree my honesty about which markets are really like going well and which ones are not. Plus, I think the fact that we clicked on a personal level pretty well. I think that was the reason why they straight went for us. And I think they did their homework as well. They looked also at some other companies, but I think at the end, they felt most comfortable with us. And that's the reason why they invested. So There is not the one single reason, but I think it was like, I always said the stars were aligned in the right position on the day it happened.
And then there is a return on investment. I know you're profitable, but return on investment on the CBD business, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what
that is a very true statement. That is a very true statement. So that's
well done.
so it was worth it doing it.
Worth testing everything.
Yeah.
Fantastic. You mentioned that these were kind of long conversations, I guess, for the investment round.
Yeah.
And then for the acquisition decision, probably also just as long.
Yeah. So I can tell you, and I think I can be open about it. But the interesting thing is that BAT, when they invested in us back in the days, they wanted to have a so-called right of first refusal. What does it mean is as soon as someone else makes an offer, if they do the same offer, we have to go with BAT.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what we call in investment language a so-called poison pill. Because if, for example, someone bids on Sanity Group a certain amount of money, only to know that BAT can buy it for the same amount, no one would bid the money in the first place because they're like, why would we do the effort when we know BAT will buy it anyways? And that's the reason why it was a very big negotiation with BAT at the end to not have a right of first refusal, but we converted it into a so-called right of first discussion. So what it means is as soon as we get an offer from someone, we have to let BAT know about it, and we have to have a discussion if BAT wants to do it or not. And exactly that happened in the beginning of 2025, that there were two parties that were actually really interested in buying us. So obviously the whole regulatory change happened in 2024. The company developed well. We were profitable. So and suddenly we got proactive interest. And I remember it was probably exactly 1 year and 2 months ago, I think it was March last year, that we got the first offer written on the table. And me and my former co-C-level Max, we decided let's fly to the UK and tell BAT, look, we have an offer and now we need to discuss with them. And the thing is, BAT couldn't buy us, but they also didn't want us to be sold to someone else. And that's actually when the whole conversation with Organigram started. And they said, like, look, it would be actually perfect if you and Organigram would merge together. Unfortunately, Organigram had a management transition exactly during that phase. Their old CEO, Bina, left, but there was no new CEO. So it was a bit of a complex process. But that's how it at the end happened, the transaction.
Otherwise, it would have been BAT directly that acquired.
Well, since they couldn't do it directly, they had to motivate Organigram to talk to us. And then finally we convinced Organigram to acquire us.
And did the health minister kicking up a stink make those conversations even harder after the regulation?
Well, I can tell you that to be honest, I would say 50% of my time every day are public affairs. So really, I believe that political work is one of the most important work we can do in the cannabis industry. But you can imagine, I told you, it started March last year. I think in June or July, the draft law of the medical cannabis law change was published. So obviously that was a big kind of okay, what's going on here right now? And what would it mean? And my strategy from the beginning was always to tell BAT and Organigram, look, there are two scenarios. Either it comes exactly like they said in the draft law, then we have the Poland example. So the market will go down for 3 to 4 months, but then it will slowly but surely getting up again. However, it will make a change in the market approach necessary. So instead of teleclinics, you need to have, similar to Bloomwell had back in the days, you need to have decentral doctors locations where people could go, similar to what you have in Poland. But you can basically digitally enable that kind of experience. So I said, you're not investing in our revenue today, but you're investing in our ability to make this market work no matter what. But what I found more likely was the second scenario, that as many laws, the law will not come as they proposed it. And I think we were working very hard over the last year, not only us, but also our industry colleagues at Canna Medical, 420 Pharma, Cansativa, Canify, Demecan. We all have an industry group in the BPC, the German Cannabis Association, where we basically coordinated and steered how can we educate politicians, how can we actually show them how the market works. And I think we did a lot of education to the CDU and to the Social Democrats, which in my opinion now leads to the fact that the law will not come at all. And that's the point where I said, at the end of the day, both scenarios at the end would have not been a deal breaker. If it would have come, I think we would have recovered, similar to Poland, but even better if it doesn't come. And now I think it's actually the better solution is it doesn't come.
Yeah, wow. You made a comment at the Tellman House about you were proud that somebody said the cannabis lobby in Germany is very strong.
Yeah, exactly. The amount of time I've been to the German parliament to talk to parliamentarians, I think it was been more than 50 times over the last 6 months. I have evening once a week I was in the parliament. And to be very honest, it has nothing to do with lobbying or bribery, which many people always think when they think about political work.
Education.
It's really education about arguments, because one thing, and this is good and bad at the same time, politicians don't know the details. They just like see a draft. They're like, oh yeah, that looks good. Let's go for the parliament with that. And what you really see then is that there were some people in a room that have no idea about the cannabis industry, were writing that law based on what they feel is right. And then that's it. But they didn't ask experts about it. They didn't ask anyone in the industry about it. And so bringing that perspective to the table and say like, look, even now I'm saying, yes, there is misuse and maybe we should regulate medical cannabis better. But what's also true is that there's like hundreds of thousands of patients who really need and believe in cannabis as a pharmaceutical that supports them. And we have surveys that actually also like second that. And by making it harder to get medical cannabis on prescription, you're not only minimizing the misuse, which in generally is good, but you're also punishing a lot of people who are actually patients. And then the whole question, but I don't want to go too far into it right now, is like, where does a patient start and where does a recreational user stop? So when you would ask our health minister, she would say the only patients are the one who have chronic pains for 15 years and opioids are not working anymore. Those are the patients. But then you ask people why they use cannabis, and the people say like, look, I have sleep problems, I have anxiety issues, I have ADHD like me. And they figured out over the last years that cannabis helps them, so they get a prescription. But according to the philosophy of our health minister, this is misuse because in her opinion, it's recreational users. But to really explain it to politicians, to say like, look, there are people who are using cannabis for medical reasons, who are not misusing it and not recreational, but you don't really see them because you have a different definition of patient. But these are there, and we got like statements of those people. We had doctors coming to the parliament. I think that changed the mind of a lot of parliamentarians.
That makes sense. I always thought with this health minister, like her title is health minister.
Yeah.
And the solution that she's proposing is that hundreds of thousands of patients just buy from the illicit market full of pesticides and heavy metals. I'm like,
it's crazy.
What is the, where's the actual thought about public health here?
Look, I mean, you have to always see, she was not a health politician before she became a health minister. She was interior security and homeland security like politician. So she was only taking care about police, crimes and everything. And I think cannabis was something that she brought back from her old career and mindset and said like, this is something that's bad and we need to forbid it. And that mindset she brought to the health ministry. And I think that is unfortunately a very true fact, that I think cannabis is one of the few topics where she feels comfortable in because she knows that topic already from her old role. But she doesn't look at it from a health perspective. She looks at it from an interior security perspective. And that's actually something that I think is not very healthy for the debate.
That makes so much sense. And then I guess another way in the original draft was Pillar 1 that came, and then Pillar 2, which was supposed to alleviate the kind of recreational pressures, right? I know you guys really that was another test of yours.
Yeah, true though. True. Yeah. That's actually another example of things that didn't happen exactly like we planned them.
I mean, but if it would have happened, you would have been the only ones there.
That's true though. So and in Switzerland, we are the only ones.
Yes.
In Switzerland, we are the only ones. And to be very honest, it was an experiment for us because, I mean, obviously the Pillar 2 was never formally approved, but there was like this, it's not really a law, but it was like this statement from the Minister of Agriculture back in the days, Cem Özdemir, who basically said that pilot projects for cannabis are possible also under Pillar 1. And what we believed is that this is strong enough to still do pilot projects, even though the Pillar 2 was not decided.
Yep.
And I think if it would have remained a left-wing liberal government like under Olaf Scholz, I think they would have approved it. But with the agriculture minister who's now from the CSU, so the local Bavarian rather right-wing party, it was pretty obvious that this will be an uphill battle. And I actually still think the pilot projects are not dead, but it's very unlikely that they come anytime soon. But what makes me happy, our drug commissioner, Henrik Streeck, he's not a very big fan of medical cannabis, but he is very public about it, says like, we cannot push people back into the illegal market. Yeah. So we need to find an alternative. And he basically several times publicly now said already, we need pilot projects to release the pressure of the medical supply chain. And that's also what I'm saying. The easiest fix to reduce the misuse of medical cannabis is not forbidding it. It's giving an alternative that is safe and as good as the medical cannabis. And then the people who don't use it for medical reasons would go to pilot projects in stores anyways, and you wouldn't have them in the medical supply chain anymore. The reason why people who misusing, and I think it's maximum 10 to 20% of people and not 50 to 60%, are using medical cannabis right now because they have no other option. And they rather should consume clean, legal things where you have where you have labor created through that, where you have taxes, instead of going back to the illicit market. And I think that's something that our drug commissioner understood, but I think he's a bit lost in what kind of actions need to be taken from that inside.
Makes sense. Guess a little bit of forward thinking in terms of what is important to you now with the landscape that we're in. A lot of M&A happening at the moment. It feels like money is back in the market for once. Yeah. What do you see as like the most important piece of the puzzle for Sanity and for you guys right now?
You mean going forward?
Yeah.
I think, to be honest, our strategy is always around three different aspects. Number one is increasing the German medical cannabis market. And what we do there is like we try to have a good balance between, on the one hand, working with good teleclinics, on the other hand, still having our pharmacy people and our Pharmareferenten, like our representatives going to the doctors on the countryside. So we are doing both sides there. And I still believe we have 0.8% of the population right now being patients. In Australia, you have 2.5. In Israel, you have 2.2. In some US states where you don't have recreational cannabis legal, like Florida, you have 9% of the population are patients. So I believe that in Germany, if the law doesn't change significantly, I think there's, within the next 3 years, an easy way to go up to 2.5% of the population being patients. So it means that the market has still the potential to triple almost over the next years. And what our big aim is to actually stay on front here and be sure that we remain, if we are not the leading company, at least one of the top 3 companies. Mm-hmm. And this we do by branding, by direct to consumer, by understanding the patient better, and by having the best possible portfolio of products in the market. So that's basically our biggest goal. The second thing that we're having is we're really actively looking into foreign medical markets. So the UK, we have just launched together with Curaleaf our Khalifa Kush strains. Poland, we are just in the registration process right now to hopefully have products there next year.
Great hire. Great hire there.
Hannah, yeah, exactly. I have my one-on-one with her tomorrow. And then the third thing is really looking into the Swiss recreational market, because I strongly believe they will legalize by 2028. So that's exciting. We also have a look on the experiment in the Netherlands, because at the moment the licensing is the problem, that you have a license, you cannot apply as a company for a license to have a coffee shop, but you have to inherit it, or you have to have the license fixed on a person that has a license. The thing that I'm saying, you cannot reliably operate a retailer 100% legally at the moment, because you have to hire someone who has a license and who's probably coming from the organized crime. And once they die, you lose a license. So it's not the right setup for a legal company. But I strongly believe that with the new progressive government in the Netherlands, there might be a chance that this experiment turns more into something permanent. And then hopefully they will look into the licensing scheme for coffee shops. And then actually it could be very interesting to participate there as well. Czech Republic, I think they want to legalize, but they are also bound by the EU. They're not far ahead yet, but really thinking about pilot projects all over Europe and seeing where recreational could work. For example, Switzerland, I think that's the 3 pillars of the strategy. Like one, medical Germany, then medical expansion, UK and Poland, and then thirdly, recreational markets outside Germany.
So testing and making sure you're ready for whatever is the outcome.
Yeah. So these are the 3, I think, if you ask me what's on for us the next 2 to 3 years, that's the 3 focus areas we're looking at.
Really cool. I've been obviously living in Amsterdam for 10 years. I was there when all of these people were applying for these licenses, and we were there building the first teams and also mainly a lot for the cultivation side. The numbers there back in the day, and maybe they've changed, but what I'm getting to is that the coffee shop market is not in a good place right now in the Netherlands. Even like a coffee shop outside of the big cities like Rotterdam and Amsterdam, in the middle of nowhere, is doing like 3 million turnover on average. And you can go into any coffee shop in Holland pretty much and look at the price, and 50% of that is what they paid, right? Yeah. So you can kind of be like, they're buying 1.5 worth of product every year. But I don't know if you have any more up-to-date figures of the coffee shops that are part of the legal experiment. Are they experiencing a lot of growth?
So I know, I mean, obviously I don't have representative data, but we're talking to a few of them. They're very happy with the experiment. They're also very happy with the supply chains. I think, I'm not so sure anymore, but I think also they are allowed to hold more stock than if they would buy it from illegal sources. So that actually brings them a lot of...
Before,
exactly. And that brings them a lot of relief what logistics are. They can actually promise more reliable quality to the customers. Ironically, very often we hear that the customers and also the retailers think that the quality from the listed market is sometimes better than the one who comes from the legal companies. But I think that will change over time. But I know that actually a lot of coffee shops are looking into going fully legal already.
Yeah.
And that's good. But the problem is, and that's the reason why what you also mentioned, that even in the smallest countryside, the coffee shop is doing a lot of revenue. The overall amount of licenses in the Netherlands is going down significantly since, I think, 15 years. And that's because that the license is bound to people. And if they die or if they decide to go out of business, there's no new license being issued. And that's the reason why I think you had don't quote me on that, but I think you had thousands of coffee shops at some point. And now you have I think much less. I think it's still 4 digits, but not much more anymore.
Yeah.
And that actually is unfortunately pretty concerning because it means that your base of retail and the availability is going down in the market. And I think that's what I meant in the beginning. I really hope that the new Dutch government will think about how to actually optimize that system.
I would hope that if the full legalization does come, you can apply how easy it's for a German medical patient to buy cannabis and it's at my house in 90 minutes.
Yeah.
As a student in Amsterdam, that's all I ever wanted.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say, with your understanding of the government, so right now there's not going to be much change? The government is kind of arguing so much that nothing's really going to happen until the next government?
Yeah, I think there are several layers to that.
Yeah.
The first layer is, I think everyone agrees to that, there are more important topics in the world right now than German cannabis re-regulation.
Yeah.
And I think that's also something, if you look at the big debates that the CDU and the SPD are having, it's really about the big things. It's about tax, it's about defense, it's about how to deal with Iran, with the US. So obviously, I think that plays a bit in our favor, that the priorities are very clear right now. The second thing, and I really have to say I'm very thankful to the Social Democrats here, even though I'm naturally a more CDU guy, but I really have to say the Social Democrats are super firm in the government that they not let the cannabis law being put back to where it was before 2024. So the Social Democrats are doing an amazing job there right now. And I think as long as they keep firm, there's nothing that the CDU can do without them. And I think that at the moment, they have a stuck situation on the medical cannabis law. And that's the reason why naturally they're looking into topics right now where they can agree easier. So obviously the law proposal is still on the table, but there has been no activity around that law since, I think, January. And originally, remember, the minister said she wanted to have it through the parliament before Christmas last year. Now we have April 2026. There's not even a new law proposal on the table, even though we know, for example, that the SPD already said we will not agree to delivery ban, will not agree to complete ban of teleclinics. And that's the reason why my best guess is I think it will not die completely, but there will probably, let's say in winter this year, when all the big topics are hopefully off the table, there will be probably an overall debate about how should cannabis be regulated going forward. And what I strongly believe is that they will try to find a compromise saying, okay, medical cannabis law might be a bit more regulated, so the teleclinics cannot go crazy, but you still have good teleclinics that can actually do what they can today. And then I think what they will try to touch is also the consumer cannabis law. And my hope is that they basically will understand that pilot projects can play a role there. I guess they will go actually down with public consumption. That's the downside. I think that's something there where actually we hear that this is a big concern for them, that you can smell cannabis now everywhere on the street, which I basically, by the way, never smell, but people say they do. So I guess that the medical cannabis change is off the table as it is right now, but probably in 6 to 12 months, we will have a debate of how to regulate cannabis in total. And then obviously we will become active again and try to make it in the way that the consumer has the best result from that.
Got you. Who in the SPD is the cannabis champion? Who's the guy who's really like holding firm?
So from the medical side, it's definitely Matthias Mieves. He's not the speaker of the parliamentary group, but he is the co-speaker together with Christos Pantatzis. But Matthias Mieves is really firm on that point. Serdar Yüksel is also in the health group of the SPD in the parliament. He's also very firm on that. In the health group, I think those are the two most important that are really like pushing against it. Also, I have to say, Simone Borchardt, who is the speaker of the health group of the Christian Democrats, of the CDU, she's very much on the side of the industry of how cannabis should be regulated. And she is actually more partnering with the SPD on that question. But then overall, the cannabis champion is Carmen Wegge. She is the one that I think is also making sure that the SPD is not moving 1 centimeter left or right from the path that they're having. So I think we could be very thankful that we have politicians like those. Actually, those 4, even including Simone Borchardt, that are actually like understanding how the industry and the consumers and the patients work, and who are actually like helping us to not create a bad law out of that.
And are they just personally super interested, so they educate themselves, or is it because of them just being more open to talk to?
I think both. I think Carmen Wegge is very much coming from the grassroots movement, saying like you should be able to grow it at home, you should be able to consume it. She's probably not necessarily be someone who is necessarily on the side of the companies here, but she says everyone should have the availability of cannabis if they want to. That was her opinion already years before there was even a legal cannabis industry. So I think that's not influence, that's her own philosophy. I think Matthias Mieves and Serdar Yüksel are people who are very smart and who understood immediately what the implications are. And exactly what you said in the beginning, they understand if you make it harder now, all those patients will go back to the illicit market, or even worse, going back to opioids, and they understand that. They didn't need us to do that, but obviously we help them to explain them how the industry works and how patients are, and we give them examples of patients and doctors who they can talk with. And Simone Borchardt from the CDU, I think she was very much against cannabis a few years back, but for her it was really like a journey to understand better, because I tell you, the biggest problem with the CDU is not that they are stupid in that sense, is they don't talk to people who are involved in the industry. And that's also something that I criticize with our cannabis industry or scene. They hate the CDU so much that they don't talk to the CDU. Whenever I see a cannabis activist talking to the CDU guy, is basically shouting. And I say, like, this doesn't work. You have to explain them why this is not the devil that they think it is. No one in the CDU wants to forbid cannabis because they know that it's not that bad, but pretend it's bad. They really believe it's bad. So you have to explain them why it's not that bad. And then you will figure out that they're actually easier to talk to than you would believe they are. And that's the reason why I think Simone Borchardt is a very good example of someone who was willing to talk to the industry, not only to me, but also to doctors, to health insurance issues, to pharmacists, and so on. And I think she went through a journey over the last years where she really understood how things work right now. She's still conservative, but she finds a good common ground together with the Social Democrats. But bringing back to that point, I think education, bringing them in touch, making them understand how the industry works, how the consumer works, how the patient works, how the system works, is something that most of the politicians don't do. And that's the reason why I think doing that is one of the main things we can do as the industry.
On that line, I guess, what would you tell the industry to do in this next phase of growth, making sure that we're not pissing off regulators too much so that we still get what we want, but they don't shut us down? I guess, what is it like, if you could just tell people like, this is what's important if you guys still want to be here in the next 5 years from now?
Yeah.
What would that be?
Several things. I would say really what I mentioned already, engage with politicians and invest in political work. And don't only harvest the fruits from the revenues you do and say, like, we don't care about like investing into relationships. I had a little argument with a competitor on LinkedIn the other day who says, like, low margins are good because you have to run a lean ship. I said, I agree with that, but if you run a lean ship with low margins, who's paying for the political work? Who's paying for the research studies? So that is something we still need to do over the next years. So make a long story short, I think engage with politicians is very important, and invest in political work to make also sure politicians understand we are serious business people here who are actually a benefit to the economy. The second thing is, I think, don't go crazy on advertising. I don't want to say that advertising is wrong by definition, but it's the how. So, for example, we did a very big brand campaign last year with Avaya, our medical brand. We sponsored Union Berlin, the local Bundesliga club. We had like banner advertising, we had big out-of-home advertising. However, the message was very tame. It was like cannabis is no broccoli, cannabis is medicine. So that tone, I think, is educational, and it's not telling like buy cannabis now. So it's in my opinion, it's a responsible way of doing advertising. Politicians might still not like it, but it was, in my opinion, responsible.
I agree.
If you, on the other hand, then say like, oh, Black Friday special, every flower $1.99, and you have like a big Halloween pumpkin as your headline, then I think that's the stuff that if I would be a politician and I would see that, I would say this is not how the medical market should work.
No, I agree.
And that's the reason why I would say like, yes, do advertising, yes, educate your patients, yes, give information, but don't overdo it. You don't need a rap star or flashy lights to basically tell people how great cannabis is. And you can do it in a tame way. And everything that you do that goes crazy, believe it or not, politicians are seeing that. Last time I've been to a parliamentarian in the Bundestag, I saw printed out newsletters on the table, on paper, from Bloomwell, from Dr. ABC, from Dr. Ansai, from Nordleaf, from all of the teleclinics. And he showed it to me as an example. Do you think that's good, Mr. Hänsel? And it's like, obviously not. But it's actually something, in reality, it's actually not even allowed, but no one is acting on it. And coming back to your initial questions, I think we have to be more responsible there. And we have to actually agree also as an industry of what can be done and what is too much. And I think at the moment, the biggest problem is that a lot of companies in the industry are doing too much. And that is actually the impression that the politicians then suddenly get. So first of all, engage with politicians. Secondly, don't overdo it. And then thirdly, I think invest also in things like research and invest in things that actually like give you data to convince politicians about the benefits of cannabis. If you do these three things and prove the politicians that we are a serious, good industry that's not doing dodgy things, I think then we are good to go.
Do you think there is enough research? I guess you don't think there is if you think people should be investing in it. But what kind of data sets are interesting still to build? Because it's not a question of is it medicine or not, right?
Yeah.
Clinical data is enough, right?
Yeah.
For doctors to prescribe all that. So what is it that you think can still move the needle here for?
So there's obviously clinical stuff, but that is basically just proving that cannabis can be a pharmaceutical. I mean, but that's not moving the needle. It is moving the needle, maybe, but it's a long-term thing. It costs you double-digit millions. So that's not what I meant. What I mean is like, for example, like the pilot project we do in Switzerland, to generate this data, and we don't do profits with the pilot project in Switzerland. It's like we just use it because we generate data that we then can show politicians like, look, people are smoking less, people are smoking more consciously, people are less smoking and more doing less unhealthy variants, like at least they leave out tobacco or they vape or they take edibles. So to really show politicians, we generate data that proves that a good regulation is better than no regulation. The second thing, what we also did, and a lot of people didn't like that, but I think still was good, we asked illicit consumers to send little samples of what they buy from the illicit dealers to a laboratory, and that laboratory checked it, and they figured out what kind of like products or what kind of like stuff was on the cannabis. There was like COVID-19, there were viruses on the cannabis, it was mixed with sand, there was hairspray on it. I think almost 80% of all the samples we got sent to the laboratory had something with it. That study cost us 50,000 euros, but that's exactly the amount of money that I think is super well spent, because even our former health minister, Karl Lauterbach, was quoting that study and saying like, oh yeah, just a recent study again proving how bad illegal cannabis can be. I can tell you, we didn't get only fans with that, because obviously you have a lot of illegal growers who are high quality growers, and they basically felt like we are attacking them with that study and said like, look, our product is better than yours, blah, blah, blah. It's like, we are not talking about people like you. We are talking about
Which people
like going to the
1%.
girly, exactly, and buying it on the street for 10 euros per gram.
Exactly.
And they get like a shitty bag of something where no one knows what's inside. So
100%.
that's what we believe is the mess of the illegal consumption. And that's basically what's the bad stuff. And investing in those kind of things, generating data, proving that regulation is better than no regulation, that's, I think, something we need to do.
Yeah. You still got a LinkedIn post pent up, which I haven't posted yet, but I'm a hash smoker. So I have to buy on the illicit market still, unfortunately. Please change that reality for me.
Well, we have some ideas around it. It's not that easy, because the question is always, and that's also the thing, is like, Pre-rolled joints is another example. Pre-rolled joints, unfortunately, are also tough in the medical market because at the end you need to burn them.
Yeah.
And that is not very medical. And similar to hash, it's 99% are using it together with tobacco in a joint.
Mhm.
So bringing hash to the market, the first question that regulator asks is, so how do the patients consume it? So, and you need to find a believable dosage forms that allows patients also to use it without smoking it with tobacco. If they at the end smoke it with tobacco, it's their own choice, but you can only bring it to the market if you have at least an alternative that is more medically responsible.
Completely understood.
So, and now, for example, the reason why I'm telling you that Storz and Bickel gets a medical license for the device to also use hash now.
Mm-hmm.
And that it could be a good gateway for us because we know people who produce hash on a GMP environment. So that could be something very interesting. But the question is only, again, based on the German regulation, cannabis must be either API or extract or flower. And the question is hash and extract. Is it a processed flower?
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely not an API. So I think that's there still needs some work. We need some work to do to figure out how to get this product best in the market.
Very interesting. For me, I genuinely believe the best combustible medicine is a rosin resin like a Puffco.
Yeah, absolutely.
Full terpene profile,
100%.
full cannabinoid
100%.
profile, quick onset. It's clean. It doesn't look like you're a crackhead with like an Apple style machine. I really believe that is the most medical product I've seen so far.
Yeah. Live rosin with a clear percentage of THC and a Puffco. I fully agree with you. It's also, it's to be honest, it's also my favorite way to consume cannabis.
Me too. But the story that I wanted to say on the hash piece was I bought a piece of Moroccan hash, looked lovely, and it was in a bag, and I opened the bag, and it was full of little white spots. I looked at it, and I was like, I think this is cocaine. Called my dealer, and I was like, I don't know, it's full of powder. Sent him a video. He's like, oh man, sorry, dude. Yeah, that is cocaine. Just put it in the wrong baggie. Yeah. And I was like, so I'm not going to smoke this. Like, what do you want me to do now? He's like, cut it off, and I'll give you an extra gram the next time you buy.
Yeah.
And just if any regulators are watching this, that is a good service in the black market.
Exactly. But that's actually like, now when you mention
the comparison.
it. Yeah. Our study also found out that there's a lot of other drugs on the cannabis. Like there was MDMA even, there was like even crystal meth on some of the some of the samples. So what you actually experienced is quite normal. It's not the exception.
Yeah, exactly. And that is what they want us to go back to.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But it's just mental to me.
Also very disgusting on like, I think 1/3 of the samples, the laboratory discovered human shit. So it means basically like, I don't know if they're hiding it somewhere between there, like, I don't know, when they're in the park, or they don't wash their hands when they handle it after they went to the restroom. I don't know. But that was actually also something where I said, like, disgusting. If you think that 1/3 of the stuff you buy in the park from illicit sources basically has human shit on it, it's like...
I mean, what I bought my whole childhood was los huevos, which are like the eggs in Spain.
Yeah.
And they are 10-gram eggs that the only reason they're in the shape of that is so people can swallow it.
Yeah.
So all I bought was something that came out of someone's asshole like a couple of months before that.
Yeah.
Like that's what I grew up.
Yeah.
Mental, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you think about
Crazy.
it. Yeah. But that's so I can't wait for hash to the market.
We'll try.
Are we far away? Are we far away?
Maybe this year.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. We have maybe someone is faster than us. You never know that, but I think we're quite advanced on that question right now.
Amazing. And did the demi-can rosin thing ever work? Because I saw that was.
I think so, but I think it's on a very small scale.
It's on a small scale.
Yeah.
They're producing it from their production in Germany.
Yeah, it's a good point. I actually always wanted to try it out. I'm wondering where I can actually.
It looked quite nice.
Yeah.
I didn't try it myself.
Yeah. I mean, the downside is always when you produce it. Oh, I see. It's a good question. Do they do it with fresh cannabis or do they do it with dried cannabis?
Usually it's fresh frozen. So you get that fresh cannabis terp.
Yeah, and I think Demican can do it because they probably use their own grown product in the facility.
Probably.
But the problem is it's very hard to import fresh frozen cannabis. So, and the pharmacy ideally has to do it. So it's a question of like, if really like live rosin is actually even able to be in the market. There might be ways around it. Yeah.
The way I always thought about it was you can do all the washing, all that, and then the pharmacy just presses it.
Interesting.
Would that work?
I don't know. I have to ask my my head of medical science. It's an interesting question. Yeah.
I'm a big fan, so
Yeah.
I want you to fix that problem. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, but it's interesting because I think you're right. It should be possible. I remember we have one supplier who actually once sent us live rosin to Germany, and we were able to import it, but unfortunately we were not able to sell it because if you import it, it's again the question: is it an extract, is it flower, or is it an API? So we had to import it as an API, but it's very important that the pharmacy is not allowed to give the API directly to the patient. So either you fill it in a vape cartridge that has to be a medical device, or you create an edible from it. But that was the biggest downside, that we were not able to bring it as rosin to the patient. So at the end of the day, I think we used it for gummies that we produced with some pharmacies, and we never used it as an inhalable rosin. But there are workarounds, definitely.
Maybe this is a stupid question, but I guess the flower isn't considered an API. So just the repackaging, which is what the pharmacy does, is the compounding piece.
Yeah.
Just the repackaging. And that wouldn't work with an extract. Just the repackaging piece.
True. Yeah.
Or not.
So it would not work with an extract
Okay.
because the repackaging is, yeah, it's a good question because I remember that there are different philosophies. And you know what the crazy thing is? Every authority in every German province has a different mindset. So for example, what Demekan is doing in Saxony might not work in Berlin because the authority in Saxony thinks it's okay and the authority in Berlin thinks it's not okay. So, and that's actually something where, first of all, the quality people have to agree that the repackaging step could be enough or not. But then you have to have the authority. You need to have the authority or the regulator in your province who says, yes, that's okay for us. And I can tell you, unfortunately, Berlin is a very strict authority.
You wouldn't think.
Yeah, you wouldn't think. But unfortunately, this is this is the reality.
One last question. I think you guys have done phenomenally. Fabian spoke about it, and it's very, very similar to how we think about hiring and building teams and recruitment. I think that's like a big piece of the puzzle that you guys did very, very well. Can you speak to your philosophy there, just on hiring, how you build a team?
Yeah, it's interesting because we originally, when you're in the tech startup world, you always look for people who are just young and hungry and you want to build up stuff. However, the thing is, when you build a cannabis company, you also want to have people who know the product. And let's say very often the real career guys that are young and hungry are not necessarily the biggest cannabis consumers. I don't want to say there's a correlation or not, but to actually find those people who are willing to like go above and beyond to have a good result work-wise, but who also appreciate cannabis, I think that was probably the toughest challenge. But I can say full-heartedly, today we have the team of exactly those people. And to be honest, I know that a lot of non-medical cannabis people are criticizing the cannabis industry of just being after money, and they don't care about the plant, they don't care about cannabis itself, and they've never smoked, but they just want to earn money with that. And I completely agree that this is probably true for a lot of medical cannabis firms, but that's at least something that I think we did better. I mean, I'm an open consumer. I think half of my C-level are open consumers. Our management, they're either patients or consumers. So I think that was something where we were actually really able to have the philosophy of having young people who are willing to like build something great, but still have a passion for the plant. And what we did, because you asked how we did it, we defined values in the company. One is passion to win. That is very much driven on we want results. But then the other one is power to the plant. And what we actually do normally in the recruiting, every candidate that we screen needs to fit the amount of values. The next one is joint efforts, making sure that everyone collaborates with each other. So we have 5 values in total, and we check each candidate for those values. And at least we need to make sure that even if people don't smoke themselves, they shouldn't have a problem with cannabis itself. And sometimes actually we had to make the call saying like there were very good people, very medical, but they really didn't like people consuming cannabis. And then we had to decide and say like, look, you have the perfect skill set, you're a cool guy, but if you have a problem with people consuming cannabis, this is not the right company for you.
100%.
But I think that makes it sometimes very hard. Plus, unfortunately, speaking about stigmatization, I think the cannabis industry still has a negative flavor to a lot of people. And that made it very hard over the last years to recruit as easy as other startups. But I think we found our sweet spot, and the way how we are located in the middle of Berlin, the way how our like DNA is more digital startup mindset, I think attracted a lot of talent over the last years.
I can tell you for a fact that even what you're doing and your active work is making the talent pool for cannabis bigger. I speak to people from tobacco, pharma, alcohol, and I tell them BAT just indirectly acquired. And they're like, oh shit, I'm missing something. Tell me more, you know? You've opened the eyes to a lot of these people. A lot of them are very excited about cannabis, but didn't have the balls or didn't really understand how to move in, when is the right time to move in.
Yeah.
And the work that you're doing is making that.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Really, it really is. And I can tell you as a recruiter, I'm speaking to these people and they're like, okay, and this is making a difference for them. A decision process, whether this is the industry they want to move into or not.
But I can tell you, to be honest, I also see that in Canada. I think one of the biggest problems of the cannabis industry is the talent pool. It's really the fact that top talents, and I see this in Canada, don't want to work in that industry. And I think we need to change that. Otherwise, we will always we will not progress as an industry if we are not able to manage good talent to come into this industry.
I think that's one of the biggest value adds that we have, is that we have enough knowledge to convince someone.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like you can tell me, okay, what is important to you as the role, and then if I wasn't a cannabis recruiter, I could go and speak to these people, but they're like, why cannabis? And they can't answer that question, or where's the industry going, or all these different kind of things. So it's being able to attract them and answer the questions, make a business case for them, why this makes sense for them to move into.
And I have to say, also for us, I mean, I know not everyone in Germany loves Berlin, but I think Berlin is a very big advantage for us as a location. Sorry, Thomas and Thorsten, if you hear that, but I think it's easier to get talent to Berlin than to Paderborn. It's just a matter of fact. And I think that's something that helped us as well, getting a lot of people from the tech industry into the cannabis industry. And you will probably not have this in Hannover, Paderborn, or wherever else.
Just the way that we phrase what you said in terms of the team you built is that we always say that the winning teams that we've seen are great combinations of roots and suits.
Exactly.
It's a dynamic team of the two worlds. One understands culture, the product, the plant. The other understands what the next level of growth for this industry looks like and how to make that happen.
But they also have to understand each other and work towards it. Because if you have suits who don't take the roots seriously, or the other way around, then you have two people in your company, but if they don't work with each other, you still have the same problem.
Roots and suits that share the same value.
Exactly.
Finn, I think this is a perfect point to call it. It's been such an absolute pleasure to have you here. I've been trying to get you on for a while, so this is amazing. Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being here.
I really, really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you.
The Cannabis Conversation, powered by Lumino. As always, thank you for joining us, and do subscribe or follow this podcast to be the first to catch future episodes.